Welcome, Soaring Sisters, to finally another episode. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about where have I been, where is my glider, and I'll also bring you a little bit of news from not only my life, but from gliding around the world. So let's get started. So you've probably seen a couple of short videos and posts on Soaring Sisters here talking about, moving house and so forth, and that I'd be back eventually. Well, it's taken me a lot longer than I thought it would. So what have I been doing? Well, first of all, as I said in a previous video, I moved house and now I live out in the countryside, and I have this farmhouse that I live in. And it's out pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And I'm really enjoying it. But the challenge that I have is that I have really poor internet. I think some of you know that Australia has some of the worst internet for a first world country anywhere in the world. And my internet is provided by that dish you see behind me. And it's woefully slow and woefully expensive. So I went and got myself connected to Starlink. Now, Mr. Musk is not my favourite human being, but I have to say his product is working really well. So I can get back on and start producing videos again. During about the last 12 months, I've been restarting and operating my business that I used to have. This is what used to be my full-time employment, what I'm about to show you. And it includes teaching people to operate four-wheel drive vehicles in remote terrain, and it includes teaching people to tow caravans, hence the little teardrop van behind me. But it also includes going away out into the desert regions of Australia and running what are called four-wheel drive tag-along tours. So I've spent the last year restarting that business, which takes up all of my weekends and doesn't leave much time for gliding or for filmmaking. And then my 6 weeks of vacation was spent out in Central Australia doing this.
Feel the open road. No better time than now to go. Following the stars and amber lights from lonely cars. Staring at the sky. Lock my heart inside the night. I see it from afar. Secrets hidden where you are. The trail that I walked so long, covers my feet in dust. No part of my soul that it won't touch.
So that was a lot of fun, and I'll be doing more of that. The problem with it, of course, is it means that I don't get a lot of time to go gliding, and I don't get a lot of time that I had hoped to be spending trying to get my skills to the point where I might be able to make it to the Women's World Gliding Championships. Of course, about a year ago, I realised that that wasn't going to happen, and so I kind of gave up on that idea. So I won't be there producing social media, but I might do it from here in Australia if people are happy to provide me with some input, and I can certainly do that. But what else have I been up to? Well, you might have noticed that one of the things that I have here out at my farmhouse is the trailer for my glider. And it's been here for a little while, and so has my glider. What I've been doing is I've been sanding the wings in preparation for refinishing. So let's go and have a look at that, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So here in my very messy shed, remember I've been away for 6 weeks, is one of the wings of the Burgess. This is the port wing, and as you can tell by the mess of white powder everywhere, I've been spending quite some time sanding it. So I'm going to present some more of that in a later episode, but let's just have a brief look at what we've got here for this particular aircraft. So the reason that I went ahead and did this refinish job was because the gel coat had extensive cracking. And you might recall me mentioning once before that many years ago, well, when I first got the glider about 3 years ago, we did a job to fix around the brake boxes. That cost about $8,000, I think, from memory. So apart from that, there were cracks, particularly on the underside, just about everywhere, and they got to the point where they had to be dealt with. Now, one of the issues with this particular aircraft is that it's been refinished in polyurethane with a grey primer over the top of the gel coat, without the gel coat really being knocked down very much at all, and that wouldn't be permitted here in Australia. So, it tends to hide the cracks too much. But anyway, we're doing the remedial work now, so if I can move that sander over to where I've been using it, you can see that I first of all have to sand down the paint, which is relatively easy. So and I should emphasize that I've been given the clearance to do this myself after some training and some observation. So here's the original polyurethane, a little bit buffed down by the sandpaper. When I say original polyurethane, the cover-up job that was done in the US. So that's the polyurethane, that's the primer, the white is the gel coat, the yellow, I'm not sure if it's some kind of filler or part of the gel coat. But once you get through that yellow, you get into fairly dangerous territory. You get into this material here, which I think is probably also some kind of a filler, and used to maybe profile the surface. I don't know that it's part of the gel coat, it's relatively soft, but whatever it is, whatever those three layers are, the white traditional look of the gel coat, the yellow, which is probably some of the gel coat, and this material here, which I think might be some kind of a filler. Once you get through those three layers, which is quite hard to do, you have to get down to hand sanding, and you end up with these little patches that are in the imperfections of the wing. So that's why I think that white stuff is probably filler. And in places you can get it down to really quite bad, but that's about 300 hours of sanding to get to there. So I have left some around the edges here where the filler is obviously filling up some holes in the, or some lower spots in the wing. So the other wing is done, apart from a couple of little hand pieces that I have to do. Obviously, I've taken off the ailerons and the air brakes, and they are not going to be refinished because that would add complexity and cost to the job. So that's where we're at with the wing, and so my glider is out in the trailer, and I'm just about to go and inspect it to make sure that it's okay. As I say, I've been away for a little while, and I should go and look at it and make sure that it's all fine and not wet. Here in Australia, we're experiencing the very opposite to you in Europe. We've got lots of wet weather, cold weather, and in fact we've been flooding extensively in this region. So my trailer is parked there under the trees, and I'm hoping that it's dry inside. Well, as you can see, it's quite cool here in my house. But I wanted to talk not about the weather, but about what's happening in Australia, and in particular with respect to women in gliding. There's a body of evidence that women leave the sport here in Australia in the first 2 years in a much bigger proportion than men. And that leads me to think that women potentially don't feel very welcome in the sport. And there is also some evidence that a number of women had given quite awful feedback on the way that they felt they were treated in some clubs. So it seems like there's a fair bit of education to do. The Gliding Federation of Australia, the board's moving towards a more inclusive way of managing women in gliding issues. So I've certainly put my hand up, as others have done, to be involved in that. So let's see what comes of that. I've also asked the question about what's happening for the Women's World Gliding Championships in terms of representation from Australia. And at this point in time, I don't know. I mean, I was pretty keen myself to, a couple of years ago, to see if I could get my skills to the point where I might be able to go to the Worlds. But unfortunately, a lot of things that I've just spoken about earlier with respect to my career change and moving city, my aircraft maintenance, and starting up my new business means that I didn't have the available time to dedicate to increasing my skills beyond the point where I was quite happy with my performance in the New South Wales Championships, but I didn't sort of go beyond that. But anyway, hopefully I can bring you some news about what's happening there in terms of is anybody representing Australia at the Women's World Championships, and who that is if they are. All right, so let's have a little bit of a look around what's happening in the clubs and in social media. Let's start with Monique at Darling Downs Soaring Club, who converted to single-seater. Here she is in DDCS, and well done to Monique. And also from Darling Downs Soaring Club, congratulations to Alicia for her first solo. Well done. Congratulations also to Grace Burgess on her first solo at Lake Keepit Soaring Club. And pictured here with John Reed, who re-soloed after a longish break. Great work, both of you. An especially big shout out to Harbans Mann, who some of you would have met in an earlier episode of Soaring Sisters, for the work she's been doing in compiling these guests to produce webinars that are on the Gliding Australia website. And there are a lot of really talented pilots who feature on there, including a number of women, Lisa Trotter, Jo Davis, Jenny Thompson, Lisa Turner, and as well as that, you've got Matthew Scutter, Tobias Gaga, and Bruce Taylor. So if you haven't found those webinars, I do suggest you go and take a look. They are hosted, or at least this one is on YouTube, but they are unlisted, so you'll have to go through the Gliding Australia website to find them. But great work, all the people involved, especially to you, Harbans, and well done. So I look forward to the lead up to the Women's World Gliding Championships in Husbands Bosworth, and hope to be able to talk to a few people who are there and bring you news of gliding events as they happen here in Australia. We're in winter at the moment, so things are a little bit quiet, and hopefully between my work and my business, I can spend a little bit of time flying, although I won't be able to get an awful lot of time off. I don't even know if I'll be able to attend the New South Wales championships yet. They fall in February, and I have planned to do some gliding in the Christmas break, but maybe I can convince my employer to give me the time off in February, as well as the heaps of time off I need later on in the year. We'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it from this episode of Soaring Sisters. Thanks for watching.